Yo YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy SalvationsElite. We're back with another video, guys, and today, man, some massive news again in the Call of Duty community, or specifically the competitive Call of Duty community. Two new teams were confirmed for franchising in the CWL for next season, and we learned that it's not actually called the CWL next season. It's called the CDL, the Call of Duty League, which is kind of interesting considering we're still going to have like the London team or whatever, and potentially other European teams. So I don't know. I'm surprised you're not calling it the World League anymore, but it's going to be called the Call of Duty League. That is what we think at this point based off of the announcement that was given. So what was announced is that there was an LA team confirmed and a Minnesota team confirmed. And those two organizations are OpTic / Immortals, which we're going to talk about here in a second, and Minnesota. And the Minnesota team is pretty interesting and actually really exciting for me personally. So there's two owners. One of them is the Wise Venture Group, which is a venture firm from the Wilf family. The Wilf family owns the Vikings. So that family is now going to be in control of this organization. It sounds like that they are going to have majority ownership. I'm honestly not sure. We don't really know the actual business details yet of that agreement. But their partner is none other than Gary Vaynerchuck, GaryVee. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, you guys know that I love GaryVee, and I've been following him for a little while now. He's really helped me a lot in my entrepreneurial venture to creating this YouTube channel and the content that I make. So I just really appreciate GaryVee, and it's exciting for him to be in the esports industry now. And as far as we know, he's going to be working very closely with the Wilf family to make sure that this organization gets taken off the ground and it's really successful. So Jonathan Wilf, one of the investors or one of the owners of this new Minnesota organization, in a little press release, they did say that the organization would be separate from the Vikings. It wouldn't be, associated with the Vikings in any way. And then this was his quote: "Our goals are to create an environment for sustained success in both the competitive and business operations. In the coming weeks, we'll begin the process of hiring a general manager to build our competitive roster." So it's interesting. In the coming weeks, they're going to hire a GM. Who knows who that'll be? It'll be interesting to see who that ends up being. And that, that's where the thought about potentially Hex comes in. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that in a second. And then as well, GaryVee had a little quote about it as well. He said, "Over many years, I had the pleasure of getting close with the Wilf family and really got to know them as amazing humans they are. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to be in business together now that the team has been officially announced. Having been on the sidelines and watching the gaming industry evolve and grow, getting involved with Activision Blizzard and the future of Call of Duty, along with the leadership and the vision of Bobby Kotick, this was the perfect recipe for me. I'm excited to bring the value to the entire gaming landscape for years to come." And GaryVee's always been a proponent of esports. He's always been behind the esports wave, and so it's cool to see him finally involved in the space. And I'm, again, like I said, really excited to see what he can bring to the table and what they can bring to the table as an organization. But yeah, the timing of it is just really interesting considering the relationship that GaryVee and Hex have. Like, literally, Hex is the closest contact that GaryVee has in the esports space. And so for them to be announced on the same day with the OpTic / Immortals edition is really just odd and just coincidental timing at best. But the whole OpTic thing is exactly what we're going to talk about now. So Hex, OpTic, Immortals. What's weird about this announcement is that it was announced on OpTic's Twitter page that they had a spot in the CWL. But what's weird about that is that immediately after they announced it, basically like within minutes, Hex tweeted, "That ain't us," as you guys are seeing right here. And what's so weird, or just it doesn't make sense, is why would Immortals post it on OpTic's page if it's not OpTic? And so what we for sure can assume is that Hex didn't want this team to be in Los Angeles. They wanted it to be in Texas. I'm sure Hex wanted it to be in Texas. I mean, considering how much of OpTic is now settled down in Texas, I mean, most of the people are there, and now this team's going to be out in LA. It really disassembles some of what they've been trying to build these last year or two, and we really don't exactly know what that means yet from Hex, but so many people reacted to this. So immediately after that was tweeted from the OpTic account, like Scump replied with like the LeBron James like looking up gif or whatever, and then Krim replied and made jokes about how they'd leaked the CDL news, or the news that the league was going to be called the CDL, in the tide of the announcement tweet. He just said, "So typical," or whatever of that. He just thought that was funny. And like so many other OpTic members replied to it. Create was like, "Wow, I can't believe I have to mute the OpTic page," or whatever. And then Hitch was even like, "I don't know where I'm going to be living in 2 months still." So apparently there's still a lot up in the air with this OpTic situation. But from what we know, it looks like the OpTic guys were caught off guard by this news. And if anything, only Hex knew about it and wasn't very happy with it. So obviously the question is, what does this mean? Like, where is OpTic going to go from here? And what's the outcomes for the OpTic COD roster? How's it going to affect OpTic in general? So there's really like two legitimate outcomes at this point. So it seems pretty obvious that this LA team's not going to be branded like how Hex would want it to be. So it sounds like it's not going to be branded like an OpTic team. It might be branded like Immortals. That's that's potentially an option. Obviously, again, it just seems so weird because all of the Call of Duty guys are settled down in Texas. I mean, Crim, Scump, and Karma have all settled down there, and it seems really strange for them to have to move out to LA now to play on a team out there. So the two really options is that one, that Immortals is basically rebranded as a team. So it would be like the Los Angeles Immortals using the OpTic roster. So the OpTic COD guys would then be on the Immortals team. The other option, which is definitely worse, is that Immortals just makes their own team. They let go of the OpTic team, or the OpTic team doesn't want to play for them. And so we end up seeing like a new Immortals roster that's just in LA. So it'd be Los Angeles Immortals with a completely new roster that's not the OpTic guys. That's definitely an option. But we don't really know which option's more likely at this point, just based off what we can like detect from Hex's tweets, Hitch, Scump, Crim, whoever it is. That's basically all we can really detect at this point. So it's definitely weird, and it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen. I mean, those are going to be basically the most likely two options. And then the other option is similar to option one, except this involves Hex. So the option would be is that Hex goes and works with the Minnesota team, with GaryVee. Considering GaryVee and Hex are quote-unquote friends, they know each other in this industry, they've met multiple times together. GaryVee has definitely expressed his trust in Hex multiple times, and GaryVee's passion is all about content creation and creating content in that space, and he always believes in content first, and that's exactly what Hex believes in with OpTic. So they are on the same page in that regard, and I know GaryVee would trust Hex, but it's whether or not Hex would actually want to do that. I mean, I doubt he'd want to move up to Minnesota, so I don't know how that would work. I don't see that as a very likely option, even though it's been thrown around on the Reddits and on Twitter, the competitive Reddit and the OpTic Reddit. But I don't think that's a very likely option, just considering I don't think Hex would want to move up to Minnesota to make that happen. If he wanted to do something, I feel like he'd want to do his own thing, and so it doesn't feel right for him to work for somebody else. He always seems like an entrepreneur in that sense. So unless he was a part owner or was added as a part of the ownership group for that team, I would really doubt that that would be an option for Hex down the road. But again, you can never put it past Hex or GaryVee to make something like that happen, so who knows. But overall, I think this is pretty great news for Call of Duty, that we have some very big names in the investing groups in Minnesota, and we have we have Immortals now in Los Angeles. So, and we finally get to figure out who's in Los Angeles. There is still options. I know some people were worried about 100 Thieves. I mean, there still is an option, or like a world where 100 Thieves ends up in LA with Immortals, because in the Overwatch League, there are 2 LA teams. So there is still potential for there to be 2 LA teams in Call of Duty. No one really knows, or who knows at this point, but it's definitely still an option for 100 Thieves. But there's still so much in the air, and there's still so many teams to still be confirmed. There's now 7 confirmed, and there's either going to be 12 or 16 teams in the league. I think more than likely 12 is probably more likely at this point. And so we're still going to have at least 5 teams announced, maybe 9 more, who knows. So there's still a lot of time, and a lot can change. But what we do know is that LA and Minnesota have been confirmed, and that GaryVee, the Will family, and Immortals are involved in this decision. And so we're just going to have to wait it out and see what happens. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you guys really enjoyed it. I appreciate all the support. It means a lot to me, and I can't do without you guys, so I really do appreciate it. But as always, guys, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.